Well, apparently, we are not getting Icarus Uprising, Metroid Prime Trilogy, or Skyward Sword on Switch anytime soon. And I guess we are not getting an N64 Classic or a new Switch revision anytime soon either. Or are we? Hello everyone, my name's Adam and welcome to TimeLag Gaming. At the end of 2018, Nintendo denied a lot of rumors about games coming to Switch and new hardware. We also thought an HD Metroid Prime Trilogy would be announced, but that didn't happen either. Let's take a look and see if they are bluffing and speculate on which of these products are actually going to be announced soon and which may not. Let's start with Kid Icarus. Kid Icarus Uprising was my favorite game on the 3DS. I would go as far as to say it's a masterpiece. It even had some of the best, most fun, balanced, and stable online multiplayer that I've ever played. However, Sakurai, the creator of Kid Icarus Uprising, has commented on the possibility of a modern port of the game coming to Switch. He thinks it would not be possible. He talked about how the game was super hard to make because they began development on it during the early stages of the 3DS being developed. I am actually a game developer myself, and the way he talked about it made it sound like the game has poorly optimized code. This is an issue many developers, including myself, run into. It can occur when developing for a game engine that goes through lots of changes, or from developing the game on an unfinished system which goes through many changes as well. Basically, the code for the game would be very poorly optimized for the Switch, and it wouldn't be possible to get it to work correctly. The details that he went into make it sound very truthful that we will not be getting an HD port of Kid Icarus Uprising. He also said there is no sequel in the works either, and that he thinks we won't see one until far into the future when somebody else wants to take on the project. In this case, Nintendo isn't bluffing. We won't be getting Kid Icarus on Switch anytime soon, unfortunately. This is unlike the case with Nintendo denying Skyward Sword on Switch. One of the creators behind the Zelda games, Eiji Aonuma, teased us and said Skyward Sword on Switch, right? So then everybody freaked out and thought the game was coming to Switch. But then, Nintendo came out and said Skyward Sword is not currently planned for Switch. However, I'm calling their bluff here because it makes complete sense to port Skyward Sword over to Switch. Nintendo had 2 HD Zelda ports on the Wii U, and Twilight Princess was already on 2 other systems at the time. If we were to get an HD port of any Zelda game, the first game they would choose would not be Wind Waker or Twilight Princess, since we just had those remakes. It is way more likely we get an HD Skyward Sword port, as it has only been on one console and it hasn't been upgraded to HD yet. But since Nintendo has already ported 2 of these Zelda games into HD, could we see an HD collection then? Well, not if this next rumor is true. Shortly after Nintendo denied that Skyward Sword is coming to Switch, a rumor came out that Nintendo wants one Zelda game on Switch every year. Now obviously they are not going to put a huge new game out every year. This will of course include ports, remasters, and 2D top-down games, along with new titles. So this is all the more reason to believe that Skyward Sword is coming to Switch. Of course, these are just rumors, but they usually have some truth to them. And just because Nintendo denied that Skyward Sword on Switch is not planned, doesn't mean it's not happening soon. They obviously want to cover their backs and keep things secret, and then surprise us. Skyward Sword being ruled out is completely different than Kid Icarus being ruled out. With Kid Icarus, they explained how it's not actually feasible and went into detail. That is no bluff. But Nintendo denying Skyward Sword, I believe that is a total bluff. It is happening. And don't be surprised if it gets announced at a possible January Direct this month. In the case with the Metroid Prime Trilogy, Nintendo actually hasn't shut this down. However, there were a few leaks and rumors suggesting it would be announced at the Game Awards, and there was even a store listing of the game. But these rumors were deconfirmed and it was not announced at the Game Awards. And because it didn't get announced, and since the rumors were fake, some people thought we weren't getting it. Well, according to Spawnwave, he says that it's already in development. I don't know where he got that information, but I trust him and I think it's obvious they are working on it. I mean, there haven't been people who own a Nintendo console since the N64 and earlier, but now have a Switch. So before they release Metroid Prime 4, Nintendo wants people to experience the first 3 games. It'll help them sell more units of Metroid Prime 4. Also, as much as you want to believe, Metroid Prime 4 is not coming out in 2019. So releasing the trilogy will still give us a taste of Metroid this year and help prepare us for when Prime 4 does release. So yes, the leaks were deconfirmed, but Nintendo has not deconfirmed a Metroid Prime trilogy coming to Switch, and we are still getting it. Maybe it'll even get announced at a Direct this month. Next up, Reggie was asked about a hardware refresh for Switch, and he responded by saying that Nintendo is focused on the current Switch hardware right now, essentially ruling out the possibility of a Switch revision in 2019. We have had many rumors of a new minor Switch revision coming this year, but now most people think Reggie's comments mean no Switch revision is coming anytime soon. However, I still think we could get the revision this year. And by that, I think they will likely announce the new Switch Pro at the end of the year with a release date of 2020. Although, I think it's entirely possible that they are bluffing and they do have a Switch revision planned to come out at the end of this year. Back when the DS Lite was 2 days away from being unveiled, Nintendo was asked if they had plans for a successor to the DS, and Nintendo said no. But then, 2 days later, they announced the DS Lite. Nintendo lies sometimes. They lie to cover up rumors because they love to surprise us. And ever since the launch of the Switch, Nintendo has been surprising us even more than usual. Also, just the other day, we got a fresh rumor suggesting that yet again, we are getting some type of Switch revision in 2019. So for Nintendo deconfirming the Switch revision, I call this one a bluff. Now we come to the N64 Classic that has been heavily rumored. Nintendo also shut down these rumors. Reggie said that they are not planning on doing an N64 Classic, but they would never rule it out. He did go into more detail, so perhaps this really is the truth, but I still have a feeling we are getting it soon. Perhaps at the end of this year or next year. Nintendo has many patents that resemble a Classic Edition and look like the N64, and it's been rumored a lot. But it also seems like Nintendo is getting into a pattern. They released the NES Classic, and now a couple years later, we have NES games included with the online service. Then, they released the SNES Classic. And when Nintendo first unveiled the online service, they said we are getting SNES games with the online service too. So it would make sense that after it being out for 1 or 2 years since the SNES Classic launch, that we would get SNES Classic games with the online service. So then, they would release an N64 Classic, and then a year or so later, we would get an N64 games on the online service. And the pattern would continue with the GameCube and Game Boy. This cycle would make a lot of sense because they would sell tons of classic systems, and then after a year or two, everyone who has the online service would get the games from that system basically for free, which would prevent these virtual console type games from taking away sales from indie games and will entice people to keep the online service. That's just my theory, but I think everybody can agree that it makes so much sense for Nintendo to keep releasing Classic Edition consoles like an N64 Classic. However, Reggie did seem very sincere with his answer, so I'm not calling his bluff on this one, but I think we are still getting an N64 Classic at the end of 2019 or 2020. I think they have it planned, but they're not exactly sure when to release it. I will have links to articles that cover everything I talked about in this video down in the description so you can read more into these topics. It does seem like Nintendo is bluffing and covering their backs for several of these, namely the Switch revision and Skyward Sword. For the Metroid Prime Trilogy, it is still happening even though it wasn't at the Game Awards, and even though some of the initial rumors were fake. And the N64 Classic seems up in the air, but the Kid Icarus game on Switch definitely isn't happening soon as much as I want it to. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like, and if you aren't subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can watch my videos right when they release. So what is your take on all these games and systems being deconfirmed by Nintendo? Which ones do you think Nintendo is actually lying about, or are they telling the truth about everything? Do you still think we're getting a Metroid Prime Trilogy soon? Let me know your take in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching.